Hello and welcome into the weekly livestock market update on Brownfield. I'm Brent Barnett, filling in for Megan Grebner this week. Our program is brought to you by the Feedstuff Finder from the University of Missouri. Feedstuff Finder was developed by University of Missouri Extension with funds provided by the North Central Extension Risk Management Education Center and the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture. Back with us on the program is Scott Brown with the University of Missouri. Scott, how are you doing here on this Friday?
I am doing good. It's a nice spring day here in Missouri, Brent.
No doubt about that. I know we have a lot to get to. It was a report day today on the livestock side, Scott. But first, let's recap what happened this week in the markets.
Yeah, Brent, if we start on the cattle side this week, we're going to call fed cash cattle 75 cents higher. We've had pretty light volume so far this week, so a little tough to get too much of a test. Those feeder cattle markets continue to move higher. They were 2 to 4 higher this week. On the future side, the April live cattle futures contract closed up 35 cents, and another strong week on those feeder cattle futures. March feeder cattle up $3.30. And when you see corn, March corn down another 17 cents this week. We closed below $4 on the corn futures. That's the first time we've done that since late 2020. So difference in terms of feed costs for sure. Well, choice box beef prices were higher this week, up $4.30. That puts them $12 above where they were a year ago. I think as we've kind of tried this slow slaughter, we have seen box beef move higher this week. On the hog side, cash barrels and gilts, strong week there as well, up $4 on cash markets. The April lean hog futures contract was also higher this week, up $1.95. And the pork cutout value gained this week as well, up $3.75. We had strength across the board, but certainly bellies and hams were much stronger this week.
Scott, why has direct cash cattle business been slower this week?
Well, I really think you have a situation where you have packers who are trying to get in a better financial position than they've been for a while. It's awful tight margins in the packing business right now. I know some will be happy with those tighter margins, but I think this is a little bit of let's slow slaughter a little bit as well, make tighter beef supplies, and push those box beef prices higher, which they did get accomplished this week. So I think that's had a lot to do with what's been a slow cattle trade this week.
Regarding the support for pork, are we seeing wholesale demand for pork continue to hold up strong?
So we generally are, especially when you look at what we did in terms of production for January that we'll get to in a little bit. But across the board, it's nice to see loins, butts, picnics, ribs, hams, bellies all higher. I think we've struggled with some of those cutout primals, if you will. And so to see some strength, I think certainly maybe we're getting to a better place than we've been for a while in terms of pork markets generally.
What did we see with the slaughter data this week?
Yeah, on the cattle side, so USDA tells us for the week ending February 24th, a run of 593,000 head, which to the slower chain speed, that's 15,000 head less than what we did last week. It's 21,000 head less than what we did last year. On the hog side, better run this week. 2.578 million head of hogs this week, up 19,000 relative to last week, and up 217,000 from where we were a year ago.
Any surprises there on the slaughter figures, Scott, or is that about what you were expecting?
So not a lot of big surprises. Again, I think the 593 on cattle just continues to tell me we're seeing this. Hey, I want to slow down cattle slaughter. I want less beef supplies. I want to try to get those box beef prices to move higher. I think that's really what we're seeing out of the cattle slaughter. The hog slaughter side doesn't surprise me. I think just from hogs and pigs that we would have got back in December, we knew we were going to run some larger slaughter runs weekly, and we're seeing that this week.
Something a lot of producers were watching this week. Just here today, the cattle on feed report from USDA being released. Scott might run through this. What did we see in the inventory report?
Yeah, so when we look at the overall on feed February 1, so 11 um, um, 11.8 million head of cattle on feed February 1. That's up slightly, 0.4%. Not surprising given what we've been doing. Very close to the pre-report midpoint of 100.1. So feed yards, basically full. Placement numbers, the pre-report trade was a little bit all over the board, from 81.6 to 94% of last year was the range of those pre-report estimates. The report came in at 92.6. I think there was a lot of question on the January placements in terms of there was a lot of cold weather that we saw, especially that I think it was the third week of January that had a lot of those cattle markets closed for the week. I think Oklahoma City was closed. I think Joplin was closed. So I think a lot of thought was placements were going to be down harder than we would have originally thought, just because of those markets being closed. We started the year as well, but placements came in at the upper end pre-report at 92.6, well, about 4 percentage points above that pre-report estimates. When you look at the weight range, January placements by weight, it was really the lighter weights where we saw the reduction. Less than 600 pounds, down 35,000 head. 6 to 7, down 25. 7 to 8, down 70.
Scott, what does this report tell us as we move forward?
Well, so I think number one, more contraction. We're going to get tighter. It probably confirms what many of us have been thinking would be the case. I don't read too much into the fact that placements exceeded pre-report just because of that cold weather uncertainty. I think really drove some to knock those placements down more than what we got out of the report. But cattle and beef supplies continue to tighten as we go through 2024. We still probably in line by the time we get to summer to be talking about record prices across the board, perhaps, in terms of where we're at in the cattle side.
Yeah, can you talk more, Scott, maybe about some of the top concerns maybe for the industry looking ahead here in 2024?
Well, so I think the big one is just demand uncertainty. We're going to talk about export markets that are probably not going to increase a lot here in 2024. As we talk about very high prices here, it makes us a little less competitive in the rest of the world. Some of those countries that we depend on in the rest of the world, I think, also economically have been showing some signs of slower growth. I think domestic demand remains one of the uncertainties here when we're going to be pushing record prices to consumers in this country. What do? Do they shift to pork? Do they shift to chicken? I think there's a lot of uncertainty around what happens. Thus far, beef demand here in the United States has been strong, but does it change at some point? I think those are the things that could take some of the shine off of higher cattle prices. And it's a good point to remind everyone, risk management. We've seen high prices. Maybe now's the time to think about things like LRP to try to protect some of that downside risk that could be happening if demand were to slow.
Great insight there, Scott. As we move ahead here and look forward, what are some of the reports to keep an eye on?
Yeah, so next week we will get quarterly ag trade outlook from USDA. So what are they saying, particularly to the livestock side of this equation? And although I should have failed to mention beef imports here is going to be interesting. As we have record prices, I think we'll talk about much higher imports of beef in the U.S. here. We'll also get some demand information out of the Restaurant Performance Index next week, and we'll get cold storage that was delayed and not released here on Friday.
Scott, as we close out the program today, I did mention at the top of the show that this week we were sponsored by the Feed Stuff Finder from University of Missouri. Didn't know if we could just take some time here and maybe have you talk with the listeners and viewers about, what the vision is of the Feed Stuff Finder.
Yeah, so Brent, I think the mission's really very straightforward. We're trying to make sure that buyers and sellers of feedstuffs have an easy way to communicate in terms of the cost of things like hay. We've been short hay in many parts of the country. Who's got hay for sale? Who's interested in buying hay? Putting those buyers and sellers together, making those transactions easier than maybe they've been in the past, just as a way to connect those uh, again those buyers and sellers through the website. There's a lot of different feedstuffs as um, producers look. They have a lot of alternatives they can look at in terms of pricing and trying to find as inexpensive if I'm buying as possible is probably a lot of what we're doing with that feedstuff finder.
Yeah, and there's a digital mapping tool for that sourcing and pricing, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's so those that haven't looked at the tool yet, I would encourage it. It's very straightforward, very easy to see where products are located. What's it gonna so it's easy then to say what's it gonna cost me to get those uh, feed products to my farm. A very nice interface for that product now.
And the website for more information is feedstufffinder.org. Now, again, it was developed by University of Missouri Extension with funds provided by the North Central Extension Risk Management Education Center and the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture. Hey, Scott, always good to talk with you, sir. Hope you have a fantastic weekend, and hopefully we can catch up soon.
You do the same, Brent.
To have our weekly livestock market update delivered to your email inbox every Saturday morning, just go to brownfieldagnews.com, and you can also submit some questions and comments there. And for a rundown of what happens every day in the commodity markets, be sure to check out the Market Minute program on Brownfield that's hosted by John Perkins. Have a great weekend, everyone. I'm Brent Barnett with Brownfield.